Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books right here in live studios in the Haven, in UK, where we are continuously traveling through the blissful adventures of Krishna and Balarāma when they appeared in this earth 5,000 years ago. Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Mahima Stotram from Sri Krishna Lila Stava, verses 412 through 416 by Srila Sanatana Goswami. His glorification of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the true source of knowledge, the ripened fruit of the true source of knowledge, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It goes like this: Sarva Shastra Dipiyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Śrīmad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidvan Duditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshaksharayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin, Madguro Mad Mahadana, Manistadaga Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada hanamuncha gadachin ram premna rit kanta yogspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Lord Balarāma is on tour of sacred places, being unable to tolerate being at the Battle of Kurukshetra, not being able to take sides. Chapter 79, the liberation of Balvala and Lord Balarāma's touring the sacred places. Lord Balarāma prepared himself to meet the demon Balvala. At the time when the demon usually attacked the sacred place, there appeared a great hailstorm. The whole sky became covered with dust, and the atmosphere became surcharged with a filthy smell. After this, the mischievous demon Balvala began to shower torrents of stool and urine and other impure substances on the arena of sacrifice. After this onslaught, the demon himself appeared with a great trident in his hand. He was a gigantic person, and his black body was like a huge mass of carbon. His hair, his beard, and his mustache appeared reddish like copper. And because of his great beard and mustache, his mouth appeared dangerous and fierce. As soon as he saw the demon, Lord Balarāma prepared to attack the demon. As soon as he saw the demon, Lord Balarāma prepared to attack him. He first considered how he could smash the great demon to pieces. Lord Balarāma then called for his plow and club, and he immediately appeared before him. The demon Balvala was flying in the sky, and at the first opportunity, Lord Balarāma dragged him down with his plow and angrily smashed the demon's head with his club. Balarāma striking fractured the demon's forehead, making blood flow profusely. Screaming loudly, the demon, who had been such a great disturbance to the pious Brahmanas, fell to the ground, like a great mountain with a red oxide peak being struck and smashed to the ground like a thunderbolt. The inhabitants of Naimisharanya, learned sages and Brahmanas, became most pleased by seeing this, and they offered their respectful prayers to Balarāma. They offered Balarāma's attempts. They offered their heartfelt blessings to the Lord, and all agreed that none of Lord Balarāma's attempts to do something would ever be a failure. The sages and Brahmanas then performed a ceremonial bathing of Lord Balarāma, just as the demigods bathe King Indra when he is victorious over the demons. The Brahmanas and sages honored Lord Balarāma by presenting him with first-class new clothing and ornaments and the lotus garland of victory. This garland was the reservoir of all beauty and was everlasting. It was never to be dried up. After this incident, Lord Balarāma took permission from the Brahmanas assembled at Naimisharanya and, accompanied by other Brahmanas, went to the bank of the river Kaushiki. After taking his bath in this holy place, he proceeded toward the river Sarayu and visited the source of the river. Traveling on the bank of the Sarayu River, he gradually reached Prayag, where there is a confluence of three rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. Here he also took his bath, and then he worshipped in the local temples of the demigods, and, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, offered oblations to the forefathers and sages. He gradually reached the ashram of the sage Pulaha, and from there went to the rivers Gandaki and Gomati. After this, he took his bath in the river Bipasha. Then he gradually came to the bank of the Shona River. The Shona River is still running as one of the big rivers in the Bihar province. He also took his bath there and performed the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. He continued his travels and gradually came to the pilgrimage city of Gaya, where there is a celebrated Vishnu temple. According to the advice of his father, Vyāsadeva, he offered oblations to the forefathers in this Vishnu temple. From here, he traveled to the delta of the Ganges, where the sacred Ganga-Sagara. From there, he traveled to the delta of the Ganges, where the sacred river Ganges mixes with the Bay of Bengal. This sacred place is called Ganga-Sagara, and at the end of January every year, there is still a great assembly of saintly persons and pious men, just as there is an assembly of saintly persons in Prayag every year called the Mela fair. Just as there is an assembly of saintly persons in Prayag every year called the Magh Mela fair. After finishing his bathing and ritualistic ceremonies at Ganga Sagara, Lord Balarāma proceeded toward the mountain known as Mahendra Parvata, where he met Parashurama, an incarnation of Lord Krishna, and offered him respect by bowing down before him. After this, Lord Balarāma turned towards southern India and visited the banks of the river Godavari. After taking his bath in the river Godavari and performing the necessary ritualistic ceremonies, he gradually visited the other rivers, the Vena, Pampa, and Biramati, and Bhimarati. On the bank of the river Bhimarati is the deity called Swami Kartikeya. After visiting Kartikeya, Lord Balarāma gradually proceeded to Shailapur, a pilgrimage city in the province of Maharashtra. Shailapur is one of the biggest districts in Maharashtra province. He then gradually proceeded toward Dravida Desh. Southern India is divided into 5 parts called Pancha Dravida. Northern India is also divided into 5 parts called Panchagoda. All the important acharyas of the modern age, namely Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka, advented themselves in the Dravida provinces. Lord Chaitanya, however, appeared in Bengal, which is part of the 5 Godhead deshas. The most important place of pilgrimage in southern India, or Dravida, is Venkatalacha. The most important place of pilgrimage in southern India, or Dravida, is Venkatachala, commonly known as Balaji. After visiting this place, Lord Balarāma proceeded toward Vishnu Kanchi, and from there he proceeded on the bank of the Kaveri. While going to Vishnu Kanchi, he visited Shiva Kanchi. Lord Balarāma took his bath in the river Kaveri. Then he gradually reached Rangakshetra. The biggest Vishnu temple in the world is in Rangakshetra, and the Vishnu deity there is celebrated as Ranganath. There is a similar temple of Ranganath in Vrindavan. Although not as big as the temple in Rangakshetra, it is the biggest in Vrindavan. After visiting Rangakshetra, Lord Balarāma gradually proceeded toward Madurai, commonly known as the Mathura of southern India. After visiting this place, he gradually proceeded toward Setubandha, the place where Lord Ramachandra constructed the stone bridge from India to Lanka, or Ceylon. In this particular holy place, Lord Balarāma distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. It is the Vedic custom that when a rich visitor goes to any place of pilgrimage, he gives the local priests houses, cows, ornaments, and garments as gifts of charity. This system of visiting places of pilgrimage and providing the local Brahmana priests with all the necessities of life has greatly deteriorated in this age of Kali. The richer section of the population, because of its degradation in Vedic culture, is no longer attracted by these places of pilgrimage, and the Brahmana priests who depended on such visitors have also deteriorated in their professional duty of helping the visitors. These Brahmana priests in the places of pilgrimage are called Panda or Pandita. This means that they were formerly very learned Brahmanas and used to guide the visitors in all details of the purpose of coming there, and thus both the visitors and the priests benefited by mutual cooperation. It is clear from the description of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that when Lord Balarāma was visiting the different places of pilgrimage, he properly followed the Vedic system. After distributing cows at Setubandha, Lord Balarāma proceeded toward the Kritamala and Tamraparni rivers. These two rivers are celebrated as sacred, and Lord Balarāma bathed in them both. He then proceeded toward Malaya Hill. This hill is very great, and it is said to be one of 7 peaks called the Malaya Hills. The great sage Agastya used to live there, and Lord Balarāma visited him and offered his respects by bowing down before him. After taking the sage's blessings, Lord Balarāma, with the sage's permission, proceeded toward the Indian Ocean. At the point of the cape, known today as Cape Comorin, is a big temple of goddess Durga, who is known there as Kanyakumari. This temple of Kanyakumari was also visited by Lord Ramachandra, and therefore it is to be understood that the temple has been existing for millions of years. From there, Lord Balarāma went on to visit the pilgrimage city known as Palguna Tirtha, which is on the shore of the Indian Ocean or the Southern Ocean. Palguna Tirtha is celebrated because Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation of Ananta, is lying there. From Palguna Tirtha, Lord Balarāma went on to visit another pilgrimage spot known as Panchapsara. From Palguna Tirtha, Lord Balarāma went on to visit another pilgrimage spot known as Panchapsarasa. There he also bathed according to the regulated principles and observed the ritualistic ceremonies. This site is also celebrated as a shrine of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Balarāma distributed 10,000 cows to the local Brahmana priests. From Cape Comorin, Lord Balarāma turned toward Kerala. The country of Kerala is still existing in southern India under the name of South Kerala. After visiting this place, he came to Gokarna Tirtha, where Lord Shiva is constantly worshipped. Balarāma then visited the temple of Arya Devi, which is completely surrounded by water. From that island, he went on to a place known as Surparaka. After this, he bathed in the rivers known as Tapi, Payosni, and Nirvindya. And then he came to the forest known as Dantakaranya. This is the same Dantakaranya forest where Lord Ramachandra lived while in exile. Lord Balarāma then came to the bank of the river Narmada, the biggest river in central India. On the bank of this sacred Narmada is a pilgrimage spot known as Mahishmati Puri. After bathing there, according to regulated principles, Lord Balarāma returned to Prabhas Tirtha, where he had begun his journey. When Lord Balarāma returned to Prabhas Tirtha, he heard from the Brahmanas that most of the Kshatriyas in the battle of Kurukshetra had been killed. Balarāma felt relieved to hear that the burden of the world had been reduced. Lord Krishna and Balarāma appeared on this earth to lessen the burden of military strength created by the ambitious Kshatriya kings. This is the way of materialistic life. Not being satisfied by the absolute necessities of life, people ambitiously create extra demands, and their illegal desires are checked by the laws of nature, or the laws of God, appearing as famine, war, pestilence, and similar catastrophes. Lord Balarāma heard that although most of the Kshatriyas had been killed, the Kurus were still engaged in fighting. Therefore he returned to the battlefield just on the day Bhimasena and Duryodhana were engaged in a personal duel. As the well-wisher of both of them, Lord Balarāma wanted to stop them, but they would not stop. When Lord Balarāma appeared on the scene, King Yudhishthira and his younger brothers, Nakula and Sahadeva, as well as Lord Krishna and Arjuna, immediately offered him their respectful obeisances, but they did not speak at all. The reason they were silent was that Balarāma was somewhat affectionate toward Duryodhana, who had learned from Balarāmaji the art of fighting with a club. When the fighting was going on, King Yudhishthira and others thought that Balarāma might have come there to say something in favor of Duryodhana, and they therefore remained silent. Both Duryodhana and Bhimasena were very enthusiastic in fighting with clubs, and in the midst of a large audience, each very skillfully tried to strike the other. While attempting to do so, they appeared to be dancing, but nonetheless, it was clear that both of them were very angry. Lord Balarāma wanted to stop the fighting and said, Lord Balarāma, wanting to stop the fighting, said, "My dear King Duryodhana and Bhimasena, I know that both of you are great fighters and are well known in the world as great heroes, but still, I think that Bhimasena is superior. I think that Bhimasena is superior to Duryodhana in bodily strength. On the other hand, Duryodhana is superior in the art of fighting with a club. Taking this into consideration, my opinion is that neither of you is inferior to the other in fighting. Under the circumstances, there is very little chance that one of you will be defeated by the other. Therefore, I request you not to waste your time fighting in this way. I wish you to stop this unnecessary fight." The good instruction given by Lord Balarāma to Bhimasena and Duryodhana was intended for the equal benefit of both of them, but they were so enwrapped in anger against each other that they could remember only their long-standing personal enmity. Each thought only of killing the other, and they did not give much importance to the instruction of Lord Balarāma. Both of them then became like madmen in remembering the strong accusations and ill behavior they had exchanged with each other. Lord Balarāma, being able to understand the destiny awaiting them, was not eager to go further in the matter. Therefore, instead of staying, he decided to return to the city of Dwarka. When he returned to Dwarka, he was received with great jubilation by relatives and friends, headed by King Ugrasena and other elder persons, who all came forward to welcome him. After this, he again went to the holy place of pilgrimage at Naimisharanya, and the sages, saintly persons, and brahmanas all stood up to receive him. They understood that Lord Balarāma, although a Kshatriya, was now retired from the fighting business. The Brahmanas and sages, who were always for peace and tranquility, were very much pleased at this. All of them embraced Balarāma with great affection and induced him to perform various kinds of sacrifices in that sacred spot of Naimisharanya. Actually, Lord Balarāma had no business performing the sacrifices recommended for ordinary human beings. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he himself is the enjoyer of all such sacrifices. As such, his exemplary action in performing sacrifices was only to give a lesson to the common man, to show how one should abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balarāma, instructed the sages and saintly persons at Naimisharanya on the subject matter of the living entity's relationship with this cosmic manifestation, on how one should regard this whole universe, and on how one should relate with the cosmos in order to achieve the highest goal of perfection. This supreme goal is the understanding that the whole cosmic manifestation rests on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also all-pervading, even within the minutest atom, by the function of his Paramatma feature. Lord Balarāma then took the Avabrita bath, which is taken after finishing sacrificial performances. After taking his bath, he dressed himself in new silken garments and decorated himself with beautiful jewelry. Amidst his relatives and friends, he appeared to be a shining full moon amidst the luminaries in the sky. Lord Balarāma is the personality of Godhead, Ananta himself. Therefore, he is beyond the scope of understanding by mind, intelligence, or body. He descended beyond the scope. He descended exactly like a human being and behaved in that way for his own purposes. We can only explain his activities as the Lord's pastimes. No one can even estimate the extent of the unlimited demonstrations of his pastimes, because he is all-powerful. Lord Balarāma is the original Vishnu. Therefore, anyone remembering these pastimes of Lord Balarāma in the morning and evening will certainly become a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus his life will be successful in all respects. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 79th chapter of Krishna, the liberation of Balvala, and Lord Balarāma's touring the sacred places. All glories to Lord Balarāma, who is the exemplar of all features of life in the material world. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, it's almost 7:50, and the next chapter is a little long. So I'm going to stop the reading here. Also, my voice is not quite on it today. So we'll stop the reading here and beg the assembled Vaishnavas to bless us with their reflections and their comments and discussion. Hare Krishna.
The first is from Rati Manjari.
Haribo Rati.
She says, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Well, thank you.
Shraddhanjali, Stella Herzog.
Shraddhanjali, Hare Krishna.
She says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. It's very, very nice to hear from you.
Sudevi Dasi says Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol.
From Vilas Manjari.
Haribol Vilas Manjari.
She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. So nice to be joining in live again. There's something special about reading along at the same time as all these swan-like assembled devotees. Always uplifting and best way to start the day without a doubt. Thank you so much.
Oh yes. Therefore that famous verse, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Sambhivo, states that the only way that you can actually properly hear is in the assembly of pure Vaishnavas.
From Bhaktirupa.
Haribol Bhaktirupa.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for reading this evening. We are all on our way to Wales back from our own pilgrimage to London for the Rath-Yatra.
Oh, fantastic.
It was such a nice time of kirtan and book distribution.
Fantastic.
It was really nice to get the association of so many devotees after being locked down for so long.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm still not mobile enough. I couldn't go myself.
Got to see Ananta Kripa and Shyam Kishore both ecstatic with books in hand.
Oh, good. Very good.
So much mercy in the air, Jai Prabhupada.
All right. Reawakening Lord from London from its stupor of the pandemic, huh? Wonderful. And there you saw Lord Balarāma, who we were speaking about today, reading about today.
From Gopakanya.
Gopakanya Devi Dasi, Hare Krishna.
She says, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj and all friends, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Gauranga Gopal.
Haribol Gauranga Gopal.
He says, Jai Jagannath, Jai Baladev, and Jai Subhadra.
Jai Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Haribol, Haribol.
It looks like Rati Manjari is typing something. Okay, I'll read what she has so far.
Huh?
I'll read, this is from Rati Manjari.
Yeah, okay.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Wonderful to see you again and again and again. Tonight we heard about how rich persons coming to a holy place need to offer charity to the local brahmanas. I have a question about this.
Okay, go ahead. I don't know very much, but I'll try to answer based on what I've heard from Śrīla Prabhupada.
Still typing. Here it is. When I came to Vrindavan, I was giving donations to the local people in the street. It felt proper to do that because they are Vrajbasis.
Well, not all the people on the street are necessarily Vrajbasis, but go ahead.
But as I stayed for a few days, they started to run after me.
Oh, yeah.
The children. And it became uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I had to send them away and it felt bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's Krishna telling you that all the instructions in the Vedas is like a tree. It's like one unit, one transcendental organism. And just like the tree has many parts, you know, and he can be very big, you know, the part farthest away from the root is also the tree. And everything becomes nourished by the water that's put on the tree's roots. But of all the parts of the tree, the fruit is the most special. You know, we call an apple tree the apple tree. We don't call it the bark tree or the leaves tree or anything else, the wood tree, because the essence of the tree is the fruit. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that charity should be done, actually it should be done systematically and in the mode of goodness, or in a transcendental way. Lord Ballarāma was always doing, everything he did was transcendental in pilgrimage. And he was giving the charity to the brahmanas. He wasn't giving the charity just to anyone and everyone who lived there. He would give them to the brahmanas, because the brahmanas are the ones that maintain the holy places. So it's a touchy subject. I remember one time Prabhupada told one devotee to go ahead and give something to a beggar, you know. So I wouldn't want to come down on one side or the other and say that what you did was wrong, or you must do it. It's an individual thing. But I will repeat one thing, and that is that all of the persons who live there are not necessarily Brajvasis. Many of them come there just to take advantage of the place, to beg, because everyone is accustomed to doing it. And the principle of charity, giving charity, is part of the sacrifice of living a human life. And it's never bad to give in charity, unless the charity is given to the wrong persons who are in ignorance, who will take the money and either squander it or misuse it or something like that on things which are, you know, not good for them or not good for anybody. And therefore we're advised by Krishna to be careful and give charity to the proper person at the proper time in the proper place with the proper attitude. Anyway, I think Krishna taught you a lesson. You probably learned it due to your intelligence.
She says, I also heard that Srila Prabhupada said that only give to those who sit down.
That I don't know. I never heard that before, but it sounds right. You know, in the pilgrimage places in India, the pandas, as we heard, you know, Prabhupada described them in what we just read, the pandits or the pundits. They've also become very, very ambitious for money, and they'll haunt you while you go around, and it makes it difficult to actually do what we're supposed to do in the holy places, and that's actually be meditative and worship and remember Krishna. That's why when Lord Chaitanya was traveling to Vrindavan, there were millions of people following him. It was impossible. And Sanatana Goswami gave that famous advice to him. Better not go to Vrindavan with such a large number of people, because you won't be able to enjoy the full benefits of going in the proper mood. Of course, Lord Chaitanya's Krishna himself, he can't go in any kind of improper mood. But still, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of all people, he accepted that instruction, and often reminded people who were, when he was talking about Sanatana Goswami, about how qualified he was to give instructions to anyone, even him. Yeah. So all these things have to be taken into consideration, and if you make some slight error like that, I don't think it's so serious. If you do sinful things in the Dham, it's very serious. You know, if you do sinful things in the Dham, then you get 1,000 times the reward. Yeah. And if you do actually pious things, religious things, and not what to speak of devotional service, then you get 1,000 times the benefit. And it's better to be careful than to be careless and to offend someone. So if you can afford to give a little something to the people that come to you and beg, there's no harm. Hare Krishna.
Next is something from Bhaktimatsu.
Bhaktimatsu, Hare Krishna.
It says, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Jai Ho.
Says Maharaj, how can we practically tune in to the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Balarāma, during our daily lives?
By always thinking of how to do good to others, and then actually doing it. And not being selfish, and try to do things for our own benefit. Lord Nityananda's mercy was unlimited, so better not to try to imitate him. Follow in his footsteps and try to give Krishna consciousness to whoever you meet as much as possible. Lord Nityananda would go door to door, and when the door opened, he would fall down at the feet of the householders, roll around, and beg them to chant the holy name. So I would say that doing Sankirtan in the Kali Yuga, in this time and place, in time, the Brihat Madanga, or the big Madanga, is distributing Srila Prabhupada's books to others. Whatever your capacity is, whatever you do, but try to give these books to others. I mean, that's what I'm doing every night, by sitting here and reading Prabhupada's books out loud, trying to give Prabhupada's books to others. Hare Krishna, according to our capacity.
Next is from Anandamurti Devidasi.
Hare Krishna, Anandamurti.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Thank you so much for reading Śrīla Prabhupāda's books every day. Next is from Vilas.
Well, thank you very much for being there to hear.
Next is from Vilas Manjari.
Haribol Vilas Manjari Devi.
She says, anger is so blinding. I appreciated how Lord Balārāma, who taught Duryodhana the art of club fighting, gave good advice to stop fighting, then just walked away when they didn't. It reminded me of how Krishna concluded his instructions to Arjuna in the Gita. Now you have heard, and you choose what to do.
Yes, exactly.
Free
very
will.
Good. That's a very good reflection. Very good. Thank you.
Free will is always there.
Yes.
This is so important for a healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
And is there in our relationship with Krishna.
Absolutely.
So reassuring.
Thank you very much. Well said.
And from Daitari Haridas.
Daitari Haridas. Haribo.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks again for the reading. The whole Welsh Yatra went to London Ratha Yatra today, and I really found book distribution and Sankirtan to go well together. We got to speak with Radharaman at the end of the day.
Oh, good.
Now hearing from you about Lord Balārāma at the end is a perfect way to finish it off.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Ranga Kshetra sounds like a pretty special place.
Oh, yes.
I understand Lord Chaitanya also spent 4 months there.
Yes, that's right.
I always wondered why Balārāma had such affection for Duryodhana. I heard he learned the art of fighting with a club from him.
Yes, that's right. Remember when Lord Balārāma, after killing Jarasandha, I think, And Krishna and Arjuna went back to Hastinapur, and Balaraṁ decided to stay in Mithila. I'm not sure if that's, I may be remembering wrong, but anyway, it was Mithila, and he had a very friendly relationship, affectionate relationship with the king of Mithila. So he stayed there for some months, many months, maybe it was even years. I don't remember exactly, but during that time, Duryodhana took advantage and went there and learned the art of club fighting from Balaraṁ. So it wasn't just like he came one day and then, went away. They spent some time together. And when a person becomes a teacher of someone, a student of another person, they naturally develop a kind of a pleasant kind of intimacy. And Balarama's heart is very soft, so he felt like that. He had some affection for Duryodhana, even though he was, the enemy of the Pandavas, which again shows the neutrality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshastina priyaha. And in terms of the fighting and how vicious it was and how angry they were, this is not ordinary anger that they are expressing here. Bhima is, fighting on behalf of Krishna, and Duryodhana was not. So even though he was most expert, I don't remember whether we hear. I don't think we hear in the Bhagavatam how Duryodhana was killed. I don't think so. Maybe it comes up later, but I'm not sure. But Krishna is always, he's so tricky, Krishna. Duryodhana had been given an instruction by his mother, Gandhini. And, she had bound her eyes for her whole life because her husband was blind. So she decided, she was so chaste, she's famous as chaste ladies. She decided that she could not be superior to her husband, so she would bind her eyes. And she did that for her whole life while she was with him. And so when she heard that that Duryodhana, the battle was coming up, she gave an instruction to Duryodhana to come in front of her naked. And so he was on the way to do that, and Krishna stopped him and said, "What are you doing, running around naked?" And he said, "My mother told me I had to go see her naked." He said, "You can't go in front of your mother naked as a grown man like this. At least you can just cover your lower parts." So he took that instruction from Krishna, even though he was a big, enemy of Krishna. He took it seriously, because it is kind of a gross thing to go in front of your mother naked as a grown man. So he did that. So then he came in front of his mother, and his mother took off those blinders in her eyes because the power of her austerity was so incredible that his body became like invincible, except for the part that he covered. She said, "What are you doing? I told you to come naked." And she said, "Well, Krishna told me it wasn't very nice to come in front of your mother naked." And she just, what to do, So, like at the end of the battle, because they were both evenly matched, just like Jarasandha was evenly matched with Bhima. Krishna gave a hint, tapped his thigh, that in that area, it was fallible, and then Balarāma put his club to the proper use and crashed into that part of his body, and that was it. He couldn't fight anymore. He was left on the battlefield to die. Hare Krishna. And that's when Ashwatthama came, having killed the sons of Draupadi. Remember? and he took the heads of the sons of Draupadi, and he thought that he had killed the Pandavas, and that he'd be very happy. And even Duryodhana looked at him and he said, "This is nonsense what you've just done. This is horrible, a heinous act." In his sleep, in their sleep, he killed them. Completely against the principles of Kshatriya warrior. So he didn't do anything. He didn't please anybody, and then he got exiled by Krishna. Anyway, he came in contact with Krishna and he got exiled. So I think there's something in Shastra that says at some point in the future he will become some great personality. I don't remember the detail. Hare Krishna.
Next is from Dalanitai.
Hare Krishna Dalanitai. Hare Bol. Thank you for the card that never quite made it. But you told me what it said, so it was equally nice.
He says, "Dear Śrīla Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisance. I was wondering why, upon meeting, it was Lord Balarāma offering obeisances to Sri Parashurama and not vice versa. How is this best understood?"
That's a hard one. I don't think I can. I haven't read, the Acharya's commentary on that. Prabhupada didn't mention. So I don't want to just speculate. It did mention that that Parashurama is an incarnation of Krishna, a plenary incarnation of Krishna. So that's one reason why he could bow down. Also, he's considered, extremely powerful. And I don't know, there's many reasons why he would bow down. It's hard to understand. I don't have a clear, definitive answer for that, actually. It's one of those things. It's difficult to understand. Balarāma was going on pilgrimage. He was bowing down to all the persons, right? Yeah, he was on pilgrimage, and one of the things pilgrims do, you go to the places, and when the most elevated persons he meets, then the thing to do is to bow down. He was also, if you remember, he was doing this for atonement, for killing Ramaharshan, like he did. And on the order of the Brahmanas, even though they knew that he didn't need to, but they thought for an example it would be good after killing a Brahmana, even though he wasn't a real Brahmana. Anyway, that's another part of the answer, that he was going on pilgrimage, and it's Naralila, and he's doing what's the right thing to do whenever he did something, sacrificial rites and pilgrimage. And so he did that. He bowed down to Parashurama, who was the predominant person in that place. Hare Krishna.
There's a question from Rati Manjari.
Haribo Rati.
She says, "Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I may go out on a limb here, but what about the example of giving... But what about the charity of giving clothes into, for example, the Salvation Army's boxes? It goes to poor people, but we don't know who they are. Is that a proper thing to do?"
I think it's a convention, human convention, that's not improper to do. Clothes are meant to, all people change their clothes after a certain time and then give it to the poor. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Even if you don't know where it's going, I don't think that's improper. Why not?
From Anandamurti Devi Dasi.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "Yesterday I have distributed 4 books of Bhagavad Gita.
Very good.
Although I asked them to donate, I couldn't get any donation. Should I get back the books from them? They say they are going to read it." There's more.
There's more?
She says, 2 days ago was very nice. I got also donations and distributed 10 books, but some do not give donations, but they are saying they will read it. I have already sponsored those books.
I would say it's okay. What could be wrong if they read that book? Of course, there is a principle that Vaisheshika Prabhu sometimes uses as a comeback to people who don't want to give. And he would say, well, this completes the sacrifice if you give a donation for it. So that's one thing that's true. On the other hand, the book's going out and they're reading it, who knows, later on they may give a lot to the movement. Hare Krishna. And you being a sponsor and giving it in charity is also the best gift, so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's all auspicious. Hare Krishna.
Next is from Charna Padma in Australia.
Charna Padma in Australia. Hare Krishna.
She says, Hare Krishna, I really appreciate your classes. Hare Krishna, Australia.
Hare Krishna, down under, the Aussies. Well, I don't consider these classes. I'm trying to let Prabhupada speak for himself as much as possible. And I don't really give normal classes very often anymore. I'm kind of semi-retired, and I've got these duties that I've very seriously taken as vows to read every day Prabhupada's books as an example of, there's seminars on reading Prabhupada's books and so many reasons, but actually the best way is just to read them out loud and let the glories of reading them spread by word of mouth referrals. That's the best way to spread in this sense. So anyway, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
This is from Bhakta Paul.
Bhakta Paul.
Who is a book distributor from the Welsh Valleys.
The book distributor from the Welsh Valleys. Hare Krishna.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Well, the Welsh Yatra is doing well. Hare Krishna.
Dal Nitai says, thank you, Srila Guru Maharaj, for your clarification.
The pleasure is all mine. Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari says, good to know, thank you. And Anandamurti Devidasi says, thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for all of your lovely discussions, and there were some very beautiful reflections tonight. And yes, this has turned out. I'm 75 in a few days, and this has turned out to be the pinnacle of my life. To read the Prabhupada's books to all of you, and anyone else who becomes attached to hearing Prabhupada's books as a result, I think my life is a success. Hare Krishna. So, Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ki Jai. Samabeda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. So see you tomorrow night, same place, same time, same topic. The ever-expanding glories of the pastimes of Sri Krishna and Balarāma-ji, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who came to relieve the burden of the earth, including our ignorance. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow, Haribo.